There's Something Strange Going On at Work, Part 3, by Blade of Nurgle. Now, there have been a few updates to the events at the office. The first is that after my forced vacation, I returned to the office and found out that my room is currently undergoing renovations. I now have the distinct pleasure of working out of an old storage closet until a better spot is being fixed. The more important update is what my friend Nick discovered. After seeing that beast in my office, I told Nick and Josh about it. Josh assumed that it was just some raccoon or possum and that I shouldn't be worried. Nick, on the other hand, was far more accepting. Apparently, Nick's reasoning for this was that he had also seen some things during my absence that he couldn't explain, and that the description of what I've seen corroborates some of the things he's investigated. Here's what happened. Apparently, Nick was forced to work late the day after I was forced to stay home. For context, Nick's office is on the ground level and has a window with a full view of the parking lot in the area near the manhole. While Nick was doing his work, Nick decided to look outside and he saw something. To put it in his words, he saw something that looked like a whole bunch of nightmares given horrible shape and form. What Nick described apparently first looked like some type of shadow moving on the ground in an almost liquid-like state. At first, Nick was willing to believe that it's just some random oil or other liquid that had spilled onto the ground. That was until the liquid started to rise up and take shape. Nick described it as the oil stretched like bubblegum, taking the shape of a really large hunchbacked man. But it really didn't look like a man. More like some weird mix of a gorilla and hunchback. From what I could make out, its skin looked like tree roots mixed with oil. It walked unnaturally, to say the least. Looked like a baby just taking its first steps. Last I saw of it, it was shambling towards that manhole cover you talked about. It opened the hole and then crawled inside. Damn glad it never saw me, whatever it was. Needless to say, Nick's account had me even more worried than before. It's one thing to see something the size of a small dog. It's another to hear that apparently there's some type of man-sized monstrosity hanging around. Not only that, but apparently this thing went into the manhole. Now my curiosity has just peaked considering the things I've seen with regards to the spider thing and the masked strangers. However, that's not where any of this ends. About a day after Nick's encounter with whatever it is he saw, Nick decided that he had to investigate exactly what was inside the manhole. He managed to convince his brother to come with him somehow. Nick took the day off in order to hide that he was going into the manhole. At around 11 p.m., Nick and his brother finally decided to sneak into the manhole. Nick described the area as eerily quiet. There were no cars, barely any streetlights on. No anything that could make it look like people were there. Needless to say, Nick and his brother were scared as hell about the whole situation. Nick and his brother finally decided to enter the manhole. Nick described the descent as follows. Me and Jonas finally propped open the lid. Felt way heavier than it looked. Lit my flashlight to see what was at the bottom. All I could make out were the indentations of a few footsteps and the marks that something wet had been dragged somewhere. Jonas was naturally scared, saying things like how we should leave or that it was too dangerous. I, however, wanting to go in further, said that he could stay behind if he was really so scared of a hole in the ground. Jonas relented and accepted going into the hole. Upon descending, I arrived in what looked like to be some gigantic storm drain. However, there wasn't any water going into here. There's only two paths. I decided to follow the path where the tracks were going, wondering just exactly what would be found once we reached the end. As we continued going down the path, we noticed a particularly horrible stench. It smelled like a mix between sulfur, garbage, and mold. It was absolutely horrible, and only got worse the longer we went on. The smell wasn't helped by these weird symbols that got more numerous the longer we went in. These symbols were created from what looked like to be some type of sludgy oil. From what I saw, these symbols didn't resemble anything like a regular alphabet. They resembled things like combined X's and upside down U with a bunch of lines appearing at the sides, and more. Honestly, they creeped me out. Me and Jonas continued following the path until we reached a dead end. Jonas complained that we walked all this way for absolutely nothing. However, I noticed that the symbols seemed to circle a certain tile in the wall. I decided to try and touch the tile to see if anything would happen, and to my surprise, upon touching the tile, I heard a small latch open and saw a small hole in the wall. I decided to crawl into the hole. Upon exiting the hole, I noticed that I was in what looked like some type of small chapel. There was a wooden altar with some kind of knife stuck on it. More of those symbols covering the walls. Some wood benches that likely served as pews, and some shelves with several moldy books in them. However, the thing that really caught my attention was the pool in the center of the room. This pool, if you could call it that, was filled with some type of black liquid, likely the same type that was used to make these symbols. Before I could get any closer, I noticed that the pool was starting to bubble and churn. That was quickly followed by some type of hand beginning to reach out from the oil. I quickly got out of there and told Jonas to run. As we ran, the most inhuman roar we've ever heard reverberated through the storm drain, along with charging footsteps. We ran as fast as we could out of the storm drain and into our car. That's probably the scariest experience I'll ever have in my life. This was naturally completely shocking and further proved that there's something deeper going on at the office. Unfortunately, I'm guessing Nick's searching was discovered considering that lately Ron had everyone in the office gathered and said that apparently someone was vandalizing the property and that he'd call management to deal with it. Suffice it to say, things are going to get very interesting here.